It all started on what should have been a peaceful Saturday morning. My daughter was playing in the front yard, laughing for the first time in weeks after another round of chemo. Her tiny arms still showed the scars, but to her, they were just reminders that she was fighting. Then, out of nowhere, two self-proclaimed HOA enforcers rolled up. Not real cops, not even real HOA members. Just two guys with clipboards, cheap badges, and way too much time on their hands. They started shouting about violations, a toy left on the lawn, a chalk drawing on the sidewalk. But then they looked at my daughter and mocked her scars, laughed, said things no adult should ever say to a child, let alone one who's been through hell. I was stunned, frozen, but someone else wasn't. Her grandpa, my dad, stepped out of the house. Most folks around here just know him as a quiet old man with a limp. What they don't know is that he used to track down the most dangerous people alive as a bounty hunter. And the moment he saw what they were doing to his granddaughter, something in him switched. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he just walked straight toward them, and that's when everything changed. The fake HOA cops didn't even flinch at first. One of them smirked and tried to wave Grandpa off, like he was just some grumpy old man. But I knew better. My dad's not loud. He doesn't waste words. He's the kind of man who's seen things that leave a mark deeper than any scar. Before he retired, he spent years tracking fugitives who'd vanish without a trace. He could read people in seconds, and the second he saw those guys, he knew exactly what they were. The taller one, wearing mirrored sunglasses and a knockoff tactical vest, started to get nervous. The other kept mouthing off, calling our place an eyesore and saying my daughter made the neighborhood look unsafe. My fists clenched. I wanted to scream, but Grandpa didn't stop walking. Step by slow step, he closed the distance with that limp of his, steady and silent, eyes locked on theirs like he already knew how this would end. The air shifted. Even the birds stopped chirping. My daughter had gone quiet, clinging to my side. That's when the guys finally noticed the look in Grandpa's eyes. Not anger, not fear, just this cold, calm stare, like he'd already sized them up, like they weren't a threat, just a problem to be handled, and they had no idea what they were in for. The shorter guy, the one doing most of the talking, started backing up. He stammered something about just enforcing neighborhood standards, trying to play it off like they were doing us a favor. But Grandpa didn't even blink. He stopped a few feet away from them, hands relaxed by his sides, but there was this weight in the air, like the kind you feel before a thunderstorm. My daughter didn't know what was happening exactly, but she knew enough to feel safe with Grandpa there. She leaned into me and whispered, "Is Grandpa mad?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure what Grandpa was feeling, but I knew they'd crossed a line. A few neighbors peeked through curtains. One even stepped out with a phone, pretending to water their lawn. Word must have been spreading fast. Fake HOA troublemakers stirring up more drama. But nobody dared to step in. They'd seen these guys before, going house to house, handing out fake citations and threatening elderly residents with fines that didn't exist. Most folks were too tired or scared to push back, not Grandpa. What made it worse was realizing this wasn't random. They'd targeted us, our home, my daughter, on purpose. Someone must have told them about our situation. Maybe it was about the medical equipment by the window, or the extra car in the driveway. But this felt personal, too personal. The silence between us stretched on, heavy and thick, like the calm before a storm. The fake HOA guys exchanged glances, their earlier bravado faltering. The taller one adjusted his sunglasses, then took a step back, suddenly looking unsure. But the smaller one, he wasn't backing down yet. He reached for his phone, fingers tapping frantically, probably to get someone else involved, maybe to bring in backup. But Grandpa didn't budge. He just stood there, his gaze never leaving them. And that's when the tension hit its peak. I could see it in their eyes, doubt, hesitation. They hadn't expected this. They thought they could bully a sick kid, mock her scars, and walk away unscathed. They hadn't counted on Grandpa. They hadn't counted on him, knowing exactly what kind of trouble they were in. The tall one mumbled something about needing to call this in, but didn't seem too sure who he was calling or why. The smaller one snapped back, his voice rising in frustration, but it only made Grandpa's stare harder, colder. My heart was pounding in my chest, each second feeling like it stretched out longer than the last. I kept thinking, asterisk, what is he going to do, asterisk? I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever came next. Grandpa wasn't a man to warn or threaten. He was a man who dealt with things fast, and if things escalated, I wasn't sure I could stop it. The world seemed to freeze as the air around us crackled, and then suddenly, Grandpa took a single step forward. The sound of his foot hitting the concrete was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Just as Grandpa's foot hit the concrete, a car came screeching around the corner. A black SUV, too fast, tires spinning against the curb. The guys flinched, looking over their shoulders, their fake authority evaporating. The SUV slammed to a halt, dust swirling in the air. The driver's door flew open, and a man stepped out, tall, dark-haired, and wearing a black leather jacket that seemed out of place in this sleepy neighborhood. He wasn't just some passerby. I recognized him immediately. His face had been all over the news years ago. It was Jake Mercer, a notorious criminal with connections to every shady deal in town. A bounty hunter. But not just any bounty hunter. He was the asterisk bounty hunter. The one people whispered about when things got really bad. The kind of man who didn't care about the law. Jake didn't even look at us. His eyes were locked on the two fake HOA guys, like they were nothing but pests. His hand rested casually on the doorframe of the SUV, but I could see the grip tightening on something behind his back. A weapon, maybe. The tension in the air snapped, shifting from awkward confrontation to something darker, more dangerous. The smaller guy took a step back, his phone now forgotten in his hand, the reality of the situation hitting him like a punch to the gut. He stammered something, but Jake just shook his head, not bothering with words. "You're out of your depth," Jake said, his voice low but steady. "And you're messing with the wrong family." His eyes flicked toward Grandpa, recognizing something I didn't understand, something that made him pause. The fake cops froze, and in that moment, I realized we weren't just dealing with two guys trying to get a cheap power trip. We were in a much deeper mess than I ever imagined. Jake took one slow step toward the fake HOA guys, his eyes still fixed on them. The taller one stumbled back, hands raised in a feeble attempt at defense, his face pale as though he'd just realized the magnitude of the mistake they'd made. The smaller guy, though, wasn't backing down. His voice cracked as he demanded, "You can't just..." But before he could finish, Jake cut him off with a single sharp motion, his hand gripping the guy by the collar and lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. "Shut up," Jake muttered coldly, his voice still calm, but there was an edge to it that sent a chill down my spine. "You're not in charge here anymore." I could see Grandpa out of the corner of my eye, his face expressionless, like he was watching a scene play out that he'd seen 100 times before. But for me, it felt like everything was spinning out of control. We were caught in this mess, and I had no idea where it was heading. My daughter clung to me tighter, sensing the danger, her little body trembling against mine. Jake tossed a smaller guy aside like a rag doll, and the man landed hard, scrambling to get up but clearly unable to match the force he was facing. Jake turned his attention to the taller one, whose legs were shaking as he stepped back, his bravado long gone. But then, just as quickly as it started, Jake's demeanor shifted. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't threatening. He was simply done. He glanced at Grandpa, his eyes narrowing for a second, then back to the fake cops. "Get out of here," Jake ordered, his voice suddenly quiet, almost bored. "Before things get a lot worse for you." The two fake HOA enforcers didn't need any more encouragement. They turned and bolted for their car, barely looking back as they sped off down the street. The tension in the air began to dissipate, but something still gnawed at me. I looked up at Grandpa, trying to understand what had just happened. Jake Mercer, the man who once brought down the most dangerous criminals in the state, had just let them go. Why? And then it hit me. Jake wasn't here by chance. He'd been sent. By who? And why were they so determined to intimidate us? I turned to Grandpa, but he was already walking back toward the house, his limp steady, like nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. But I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot, and as we all went inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives had just taken a turn, one that would lead us deeper into a world I had no idea we were even a part of. As we stepped inside the house, I glanced back at the street, half expecting more trouble to show up. But the road was empty, eerily quiet. My daughter, still holding my hand, asked if everything was okay. I held her close, trying to reassure her, but my mind was racing. I kept wondering who had sent those fake HOA enforcers and what they really wanted. But it wasn't until later that night, when Grandpa finally spoke up, that I started to piece things together. Jake Mercer hadn't just been a random person. He was connected to Grandpa's past, someone who owed him a favor after years of bounty hunting. Grandpa had called in the favor to make sure we were safe. He didn't want to involve us in his old world, but he couldn't let things go too far. I realized then that the fake HOA scam wasn't just some petty neighborhood annoyance. It was a much bigger scheme, and we had become targets without even knowing it. In the end, the fake cops never returned, but the mystery of who was behind them still lingered in the back of my mind. One thing was clear, though. We weren't going to let anyone hurt our family again, and with Grandpa on our side, I had no doubt we were ready for whatever came next.